Hello guys, it's me, Stark, and a fellow Redditor started a very interesting topic. How to play late game as an archer civ against Cav. Okay, very specific. So hi, I'm approximately 12k archer player, play with Britons, Ethiopians, and Mayans. I tend to do very poorly in mid to late Imperial Age against cavalry players. Once the paladin or even the full upgraded cavalier is in, I have an army ball that is hard for the enemy to engage. Indeed, usually guys will have like archers, halberdiers, gonna be very difficult. Mix of halbs and arbs, but I have zero mobility. Indeed, you do have a very limited mobility. My opponent does not have to engage, and can easily raid me to death. Imp is usually messy, and my eco is all over the place. It's not so easy to wall it off. It never is, right, my friend? Defensive castles in eco help, but not as much as I would like. If I move forward with siege, opponent can just dive, kill the siege, and he still has castles and my army cannot do anything. Well, players are actually knowing how to buy time and counter raid. Interesting. Do archer saves fall off in mid to late Imperial Age? If you didn't make enough advantage before, also, yes, archer civ should generally be faster to imp. Agree. But when enemy has a decent defensive castles, you cannot move forward that much without siege. Also truth, which takes time, and by the time you have enough, enemy is also on Imperial Age, getting the final upgrades with more than 30 cavaliers waiting. Alright, very specific, but honestly, that can happen. There was a long discussion. I'm also going to link here this post on the video, but what I actually wanted to do here is to go for AoE to talk a bit about archer play. I downloaded some games from the past weeks from good players. For example, right here we have Goku versus Content. Goku is playing as the Britons, Content is playing as the Khmer, and this is basically a matchup of, we could argue, an archer civ, the Britons, versus a cavalry civ, the Khmer. A small disclaimer that I have to do is that on a very high level, cavalry players, when they face civilizations such as the Ethiopians, the Britons, they might not actually bet on the cavalry on the beginning, but instead focus a bit more on skirmishers and elite skirmishers. I would like to point out that Age of Empires is RTS, but it's also a game that you are going to build during the time. So one good thing that I feel like every player should do is to already set up their defenses and set up for the later stages of the game. For example, on this matchup, Goku is playing here versus Content. He's doing a very controversial strategy because he's trying to go for an aggressive build with Menatars but also walling Revly, so he might actually lack few resources, even ended up losing some fields. But what I truly want to say is take a look on how players are already considering the later stages of the game. While fighting here with Man-at-Arms and making like a huge mess on the Khmer economy, Goku is already setting up his economy. We are around 12 minutes and most of his map is walled. He will barely have to invest into Spearman because he's walling himself, so right there he's fully walled. And this will mean that basically raiding his farming eco, for example, during all the feudal age and the castle age is gonna be very difficult. I just ask you, how many farms can you actually fit on this map? Honestly, I could easily fit like 18 farms here during feudal age. Think about the town center here maybe later and just populate all this area on the back here with like 10 or 12 more farms. Honestly, for the archer civ that would be a total of 30 farms. That would be enough for me to have economy for all the game. So this is what I mean. This guy is already setting up with these walls enough space for him to farm and to be safe here from raidings. But this game is not gonna go for a very late Imperial Age, so I actually had to find a game that did, and I did found one here between those two players. Our archer player here playing as the Britons is DS Gali, and our cavalry player here is Ziki from the OS team. Both players are around 2k3, so they are very solid players, they know what they're doing, they're very good, they have very refined skills. As you can see, Gali is already starting by luring, so he's maximizing the food under his TC, and look at this is very interesting. We are talking about Dark Age. He just did his 2 houses, he's getting food, made his lumber camp, but he knows that he will have to build houses in order to go beyond 15 population, 20 population, and for that reason this guy already starts to set up a few houses, connecting this wood line to his TC. Honestly, we could argue that there could be better walling setups here, like walling this area or anything, but he's already thinking about protecting himself. The wood is on the back, the gold's here, so one thing that's very important for every archer player is to think that you do not have a mobile unit, you do not want to be stuck chasing down scouts, knights, or any cavalry unit, so you already start to set up the walls. You are just not going to play a regular game, and once things start to get messy, you are going to think, it's time to get some walls. No, my friend, you are going to do this from the beginning, and it doesn't matter if you're just using wood buildings. Wood buildings are pretty much decent here for the defense, especially on early stages, since stone walls and stone defenses are quite expensive. Now we can see that Gali is going for an archer build, so he is playing here with archers. He's going towards the gold to keep his production, and he has both spearman and scout protecting his villager that is trying to get his wall finished. Different from Goku that ended up losing a few views, I think that it will be more difficult for this guy to lose views against scout raidings if the villagers that are isolated, for example the Waller one, will be protected here by cavalry. I think that 2 or 3 scouts can barely do any significant damage because you can just fight back with villagers. But when the villagers are alone, especially the wallers, they are the easy targets. So if you want to wall, just try to do that. He's going for a more passive approach. Instead of just sending his initial units to try and attack the kitten, he's just messing them up and focusing here on the economy and the setup of the game for later stages. And honestly, that's completely fine. The scouts are coming around, but if they want to raid, they'll have to face off these spearmen. If they want to go towards the wood or the gold, they'll have to face another spearman. And meanwhile, Gale is still investing into the walls. I think that we could arguably, we could make an argument that perhaps he should be actually going for bigger walls. I mean, instead of just pushing the wood, this wall towards the TC, he could go for a wall behind the wood, another wall there. There are many scenarios and many situations that we could argue, but the thing that I want you to keep in mind is, it doesn't matter if you're going for a small wall. Later, you are going to get off of these walls anyway. You are going to have to build new town centers and expand your economy. Then you have enough time to think about. Another biggest thing about archer play is one of the biggest menaces here to the archer play are skirmishers. Right there, just for the fact that the Ziki has some skirmishers, he actually forced Gali to go out of his berries, idle a lot of villagers, and even forcing to transition into scouts. So yes, even if you play scouts, you might actually want to make some cavalry sometimes. That's a perfect example, and walls, guys, are not invincible. As you can see, a small group of scouts can actually deal a very significant amount of damage to feudal age buildings, especially houses, and that can be quite difficult for the archer player to fight against. But the archer player, when combined with scouts, will have a very strong unit composition. The scouts are not finding any targets here because of the archers on the back. They are trying to go, but some quick wall job here is done by Gali. To be honest, if he had this wall here, if these segments were there, he wouldn't even be having to deal with idling his economy. So what's happening here is not great. He's idling the economy, but he's defending. Well, anyway, that's something that can happen on the games. By the way, guys, remember that he lost this house and this wall. He already rebuilt, making it difficult for Ziki to keep pressuring here without it. By playing with archers and scouts, he did manage to kill the enemy scouts. He's just trying to avoid any damage here from the enemy skirmishers, and he will allow his own scouts to finish the job for him. So yes, archer, scouts, increasing the economy, building a lot of farms. Honestly, that's one of the things that I see archer players lacking the most. They're like, oh, I'm going for archers, Stark. I don't need too much farms. You need, my friend. In some cases, you do need. For example, in some scenarios, you are actually going to be forced here to build some small amount of cavalry, be either scouts or even a small number of knights, to be able to counter massive skirmishers. So we're not talking about Castle Age yet, so there's not even the option of going for mangonel, so going for that is important. Anyway, let's keep going. All the economy from Gali is under the walls, so even if the enemy tries to raid him, he's gonna have a very hard time, because he cannot access his economy because of the walls, and this is important. You don't want to allow the guy to access your economy, and you can do that by making the buildings. Right there, he's developing, he's adding new town centers. As I said before, you can even try to fit some town centers on the inside of your walls, and sometimes you're going to be able to do that, especially if you went for like a bigger wall. It will be very likely that you will manage to do that, but often you are going to have to expand. After all, we're playing Age of Empires, and you do not want to live in a small village here as the game keeps going on. You actually want to live and build an empire, and in order to do that, you have to expand. So Gali is already making a TC, a very strategical one. Honestly, I think that this is a perfect town center. This town center allows his villagers to collect gold, allows his villagers to collect wood. He can also farm around it, so even if the enemy tries to raid, he can ride the villagers on the town center. So that's a great town center and allows him to expand a bit more. Even if the enemy somehow stops his gold, he still has this other safe gold to take. And as you can see, the enemy is trying to mass elite skirmishers, and this is always a game of adaptation. Archers are your core unit, but if you are playing, for example, against massive knights, perhaps you want to focus more on full walling, do not leave any gap, and add monks. But if you are playing against elite skirmishers, which is the case, you actually want to use another support unit, the mangonel. So the concept of using support units to archers is very good. I think that the favorite one from everyone is the mangonel. For several reasons. 1. It counters the skirmisher. 2. It helps in archer wars. And 3. You can actually use it as an aggressive unit to then boost and attack your opponent. But if you are playing versus Rev Cavalry, my personal recommendation would be for you to invest into the monks, because the monks have a great synergy here with the archers. Even if the enemy has a significant amount of knights, by getting like 3 or 4 conversions, you can totally turn the tides of a fight and make it very difficult for him to keep going aggressive. As you can see, developing and is expanding, and we can see now a 4 TC here by Gali. Another thing that I want to mention is that look at his farm. Every farm that this guy has is under the range of his town centers. So even in later stages, if his farms are about to get raided, it's not so difficult for him to hide the villagers on the TCs. So right now, even if a few cavalry units get passed by, the town centers can actually deal with the menace. He's walled here with a palisade, reinforced with a house. He's walled there, he's getting some pressure here from Ziki. He's increasing his buildings production, which is very important for Imperial Age. You want to increase the speed which you produce army. He's lacking houses, there are mistakes happening in this game, that's not a perfect game, but this guy is gonna play just great on Imperial Age. And let's start with controlling the map. If you have archers, you are often gonna get faster to Castle Age, which was not the case, but to Imperial Age, which was not the case, but even so, you can still get to Imperial Age with a very reasonable timing. What Gali is doing here is great. He's seizing map control by adding castles. The skirmishers are still harassing him, the skirmishers are still threatening him, but he's not getting deceived by those skirmishers. Instead of adding a very defensive castle, he actually places a castle here on the highest hill on the map. This hill controls this area, it will be a great bastion to his defense, so basically going for map control is one of the things you can do to deny the raidings, but you are going to understand it later and why. He's just defending here by using mangonels. So elite skirmishers alone does suffer a lot to fight against mangonels. This guy can even out-micro the mangonels for now, but that's not something that he's gonna be able to do consistently during all the Imperial Age, especially if you do upgrade onagers. But honestly, you do not want to waste a lot of gold fighting elite skirmishers, so he's already making a switch here, and his secondary unit is going to be the light cavalry. His secondary unit here, guys, is light cavalry because he's facing a massive skirmishers. But if you are facing a cavalier, like the guy on Reddit said, which unit would you choose for? The halbs, okay? The halberdiers would be your support unit. As you can see, there are many missed opportunities here for Gali. For example, he's eating his wood line, so he's getting all this area open quite soon. He's making new houses. I think that he could be already making these new houses around there to complete his walls, or on the other side. The same thing can be said here about the stables. Instead of building stables here on random positions, and even the archer ranges, I think that he could have aligned it range, wall, stable, 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 and just complete wall himself using his own buildings. So that's a missed opportunity from Gali. That's something that he could have done even a bit better. Not saying that his game is bad, but it could be always better. Mango is attacking the skirmishers. Getting like at least half walled is very helpful, as I said. And right there, guys, he has a very solid position. As our fellow Redditor commented, when you have a big massive army of ranged units, it's very difficult to jump on them. You know what makes it even harder to jump on those units? They are under castles. So if you do control the map using castles, for your opponent to attack, he will have to go around, he will have to go on different ways. This is actually going to slow down his attack, and while he's just trying to go around and raid, you can actually keep pressuring him. I think that one of the things that you can do to properly siege your opponent is using your siege under the range of your castles. Right here, Gali has advanced trebuchets, but those trebuchets are actually under the range of the castle. So even if Ziki tried to jump on these traps, he will also lose a lot of units, not only to the archers, but also to the castle that is kind of shielding his siege units. Meanwhile, he's getting raided, and now he starts to do something very interesting. Complete his walls and invest into stone walls. Stone walls are expensive and not quite great on the early stages of the game. But as the game develops, you actually gain this extra space here, and that can be quite useful. Ziki is trying to open a new front here. He's raiding Gali here. He did kill his town center. He's killing like several houses. He's trying to crack open a hole on his base. So he's getting quite wide open here on the back. But guys, do not mistaken, there are many ways for you to defend. Most of his economy has been moved towards the back. He's now placing a castle, and there are walls. So this means that in order to reach his economy, the units have to go through the town centers, so they die. They have to go through this castle, so they get shot. So basically, he is making it difficult. You cannot fully protect your eco only with the buildings, but you can at least do a great job by combining house walls, stone walls, castles, and meanwhile, his opponent is having to deal with the siege. The cavalry here is great to snipe the enemy siege, so he's not losing ground either. He's attacking the guy. Start to said that this was a game versus cavalry. Hold on, my friend. It's only 45 minutes. Hold on, hold on. We are about to get to the caps. And as you can see, the Khitan player is now starting to mix in cavalry. So he's playing with elite skirmishers and cavalry. The Breton has chosen to play with lots of cavalry, which honestly, especially on higher levels, are quite useful because you can counter raid, you can just keep spamming. And as you can see, he is stopping the menace here from his opponents by using the light caps. Rushing, he's starting to lose ground on the center, but no problem. As long as he still has the hill and castles here on the center, he will always have a solid position for his archers to be at. Damn, strong stuff. And now the problem that our fellow Redditor mentioned has started. There are cavalry going around the castle, not entering on its range and actually focusing to raid the economy. So if you do have buildings close to your economy, you can actually get your villagers and run from the cavalry, but that's not something sustainable, and that do requires a lot of attention, a lot of clicks. So eventually you are going to idle the villagers, you are going to lose the villagers. But look at what's happening here. Light cavalry are trying to jump on this guy's economy, but he can predict from where the light cavalry are going to come. They are always going to have to come towards this small gap or the gap here on the top. So in order to stop that, he can actually just choose to follow the enemy units. Those are light cavalry, so light cavalries can chase them. But if you're facing paladins, you would actually have to do that with halbs. And obviously that's not ideal. And as your opponent realizes that you have a gap, he will just keep sending reinforcements in order to do that. Right here, the Tatars is upgrading Hussar, he's upgrading Lamellar Armor, so basically he's getting a lot of ups that are gonna increase the efficiency of his troops. Meanwhile, he's trying to somehow deal with the archers, but of course, if you are a good archer player, you'll always keep a big mass of archers which are very difficult to jump in, and you are just going to buy time. The raidings are starting to kill Gali, guys. Look at that. Multiple Hussars, and they are going towards the core of the economy. In the 1v1, the enemy Hussars are better than his light cav. Also, he does have an upgrade called Lamellar Armor, if I'm not mistaken, that deals back damage to the opponent, and there's probably another upgrade that helps the cavalry to heal itself. So there are at least 2 upgrades taking effect in those Hussars, which forces them, which makes them better than the light cavalry from the Briton. He's trying to besiege, he's suffering from the very problem that our Redditor friend related. He's trying to siege the opponent, but the opponent has good castles, which is difficult for the archers to keep advancing because these castles are very well placed, and honestly they truly are, right? In order to attack these castles, he would have to get the trebuchets and set up them from below, which is not incredibly good. But meanwhile, he's fighting with his army. On the direct confrontation, his army is doing quite well, all his light cavalry and all of his arbalests, but knowing that he has to deal with the raiding problem, he's actually increasing the walls. As you can see, he has completed these walls here around the TC with houses, palisade walls, so even if some units try to go around this way, they're not going to be able to find anything. Enemies trying to get his siege, so the same problem that our friend related. And look at this, on the top, guys, he is investing into palisades. It might not look a lot, it honestly might seem that, oh, hold on, this guy should have bought some should have got some relics. He has way too much food here being used. Why not selling food and build it as stone? Well, that's a very good question. Honestly, I think that if you want to fully wall this, buying like 100 stone would actually provide you a very good defense option here. So that's something that you could do. Try to chase down the enemy cavalry if you have an archer civ is often not gonna result in great fights, because in the 1v1 you are always going to lose, and the problem that our friend here related to us is happening. He's not managing to advance because he's either getting raided or his siege is getting sniped by the Hussars. I think that one of the things that is costing this Briton guy the game is he's insisting way too much in the light cavalry, and to be honest guys, if you have to play on this scenario, even as light cavalries are great against skirmishers, perhaps it was worth to also think about upgrading the halberdiers to start adding a small number of them. Even something like 10 to 15 halbs can do like a huge difference on the fights, right? So I think that having a triple army composition could be the key here for Gali, but honestly, he can totally finish the game using light cavalry plus arbalest alone. Meanwhile, look at the ratings. With all these walls that he's reinforcing, the Hussars cannot attack his farms anymore. He has like 30 farms around here, and those farms are actually safe from the enemy. The Hussars are having to go around. If they go around here, this is also walled. If they go around here, they'll have to pass through the army or through the castle. So basically, he just isolated all this area, all the top area of his base from the enemy. Of course, the guy can try to open, but he just have enough time to wall back. If those were stone walls, even try to attack the walls would be useless. And of course, meanwhile, what he's doing? He's also raiding, and that's something that's important to state. Just pushing the enemy with archers is not the only way to win. Even if you have an archer civ like the Britons, you can still fit in some raidings. Light cavalry, despite not being the greatest cav to fight 1v1, is a great unit to counter raid. Fight keeps going on, this castle still is strong. As you can see, the Hussars are trying to crack open here a hole, and Gali does what I just told you guys. This is Imperial Age, you have a lot of villagers collecting resources, so selling some food and buying stone is not impossible. You do not have to buy 1000 stone. With like 100 stone that he has bought, and with a few villagers, he did manage to wall off all the Hussars, so they are not going to succeed into joining this guy's economy and making a mess out of it. You see? Oh no, but he's attacking on the other side. Okay, you can keep making your walls reinforcing your base. As you can see, he now did get access to some gold in the center, which he can use to get even more walls done. So all the top area is defended by walls. In the center he does have castles, and the bottom, well, the bottom is not yet populated by his opponent, but even if he tried, he would know. And guys, we are talking about raidings, so in the same way that you can defend from the raidings using castles and walls, your opponent can as well. But if your opponent is just not respecting your archer civ and saying, I don't need stone walls, the castles can do that. I have cavalry. You can actually abuse from that fact to counter raid him. So as you can see, he is strongly counter raiding his opponent. Look at the amount of dead farmers here. Just to light cavalry. So cavalry players often are going to overlook the potential of the raiding from archer civs. So even if you have civilizations such as the Shu, the Ethiopian, a few light cavalry can always be helpful, especially in this mid to late imperial stage of the game, where you have your core army, you are fighting, you are holding your ground, you are even holding like a big hill, but you are not doing that. By the way, the Russars, guys, after failing to join the stone wall, they are trying to go around. But once they try to go around, they actually get stuck here and are forced to fight all these arbalists. He's insisting here, huh? But look at that. Look at the difference. Gali, who's the archer guy, is walled. So the Russars are just waiting time and not dealing any significant damage. Meanwhile, his own light cavalries are finding some free passage here through the opponent. Okay, not free passage, he's having to go around the castle, he's even losing a few light cavalry in the process. But even while losing the light cavalry, this is being totally worth because he's managing to kill several villagers from his opponent, while his opponent is failing to attack him. So this is something very important. You can win, guys, cavalry civ players by counter raiding as well. Now we have a problem. Ziki is trying to raid the left side of his economy, where most of his farms are. But look what happens. Gali just forces here the walls. He keeps building the walls. If he doesn't have stone, he's gonna build a stone wood ones, and he's just gonna try to repel the cavalry with trash units. On this scenario, the cavalry from the enemy is much better, so he even ended up losing here. No problem. Because he can just keep spamming and fighting back. Enemy is growing his attack, he's walling back, he did upgrade fortified wall now, making it a lot harder for the opponent to punish. He's still having trouble with what you have said, my friend. He's still trying to push, but not managing to do that because of the castles placed by the opponent and because of how much his siege is getting attacked here. He pushes the enemy Russar closer to his own army in order to kill. If he fight together with his army, opponent's gonna have a very hard time. He also sent villagers here to repair the siege, another small good detail, but look at the ratings. They are no more. There are 22 tiles of stone wall there, 22 more here. He's just taking wood and farming like Revly, and all his farms are concentrated on this small area. And as his opponent is spreading more towards the map with farms, he is still very exposed to raids. His castles cannot cover all the area, while Gali, with one castle at home and one castle at the center, is doing a great job here. So spread your castles, build walls, and you're just gonna have a very successful Imperial Age. More big packs of light cavalry, arbalests, trebuchets on the quill. Honestly, this is getting very difficult for the cavalry player that is getting actually forced to fight in the 1v1. If you fight against the archer players in the 1v1 or against his death ball, it's gonna be always hard to kill, especially if the archer player can run towards a castle or if the archer player can always keep a big hill like Gal is doing. Now he can develop the eco. Remember this castle on the center, the only villagers that are not walled are taking resources under the castle. So raiding even those villagers will have a cost, and it's not gonna be a cheaper one. You are gonna have to deal here with the castles. This guy has recovered his economy, he's a very experienced player, as I said, he has already more than 100 views, he's fully populated, semi for the British player, so we do have a post-Imperial Age scenario here. We have more than 1 hour and 15 of game. As you can see, one thing is concerning me about the Briton, which is he has no access to the relics. About the kitten, he does have access to 3 relics. There are still some relics to be disputed by those players, so this is something that you should also concern during the mid game. Why not making a monastery and getting some relics? I think that especially when you are playing against cavalry civs, they are often gonna make monasteries to heal their knights and get relics, so I recommend that you also do your own monasteries to convert the enemy army, heal your own army, and get the relics. Hussars are finding no targets. All the fights are happening on the direct confrontation, which will usually be good for the archer player. As this fight's happening, the full potential of Gali is present here on the center. Why? Because right now he has invested into the walls, so he needs barely any resource here to fight against raiders. He doesn't need to keep spreading his army, halberdiers, light cavalry, because all the hussars from the enemy are just not going to find any raiding target. So this is important. Once you free yourself from the raidings by adding small walls and connecting the forest using the map as your own leverage, you can actually focus on the fully on the push. And once you do that, you are gonna have a lot more potential. As you can see, Gal is pushing the enemy castle, multiple trebuchets. There comes the enemy to try and snipe the siege, but if you are fully focused here and you have no distractions, you can actually answer to that by shielding your siege using your army, and therefore making it very cost for the enemy. Right here, the Khitan player did jump on the trebuchets and got 0 kills, guys. Very important. He's still pressuring, he's forcing his opponent to keep repairing the castle. Just a slow push, just enjoy, and that's basically the idea. Whatever this guy's doing, I'm very confident that our Redditor friend and other archer players can also do. Keep a big mass of archers, always in a safer spot if possible, and just keep sending trash units here on the front to act as a mid shield. I'm meaning light cavalry, halberdiers. Look at another small detail that is quite important on the siege scenarios where you're trying to push the enemy. Get some villagers forward. On this point of the game, you can actually afford. And as you can see, there are like several repairers here around the trebuchet. So this trebuchet starts to getting targeted by the enemy Hussar, but it doesn't go down because there are villagers repairing. Of course, you need some gold to keep repairing. If you have relics, you are probably always gonna have a small amount of gold that will be just exactly what you need to keep repairing this. Since Gali didn't prioritize getting the relics, he's lacking this small amount of gold here. So in order to have those, he will have to go towards the market. And thanks to that, even if the enemy did hold for quite long, he still did manage to get the siege executed here to kill the traps, and eventually the cavalry player sees no more curse of action for him to win the game. The walls are set up so he cannot raid and he cannot push against the big dead ball for the reasons that our friend already stated. So that's the thing here, guys. Counter raid, builds from the fact that horse players will usually overlook the potential cavalry power from archer civs. Play with your core archer army and add a secondary unit. On this scenario it was actually the light cavalry because the biggest menace here were the skirmishers, but in many scenarios, especially if you're playing against heavy cav like the paladins, perhaps halberdiers are your best idea. And as you can see, it's very affordable to do this kind of defense, to move your eco behind, to keep closing yourself here, even using houses, palisades and other buildings, at least to buy time and deny the enemy to be raided. Very good and solid defense by Gali, no villager exposed here to be raided, and all the army focused and concentrated on the push. Hope this video has helped you, and hope you can actually increase your potential gameplay as an archer civ. during the Post-Imperial Age.